Well, Black Ops 2, it seems like you guys are really upping the action for this one. It seemed like a really huge game.
Absolutely. You know, I think in typical Call of Duty style, when you start looking at that epic single-player campaign, like driving or living that, you know, multiplayer, that summer blockbuster, you know, I think that's really one of the pillars of Call of Duty, is giving the players this intense action, you know, at the seat of your pants, flying through the levels, and, you know, throw in, you know, the future 2025 with new toys, new tech that players haven't seen. We're very excited about where Call of Duty Black Ops 2 is going to take the player.
I noticed that there's been quite a bit of people talking about that they're all the big action games that you know, they're getting a bit tired of it. Do you feel that there's still room for, you know, a very single-player, story-focused, big action game like this?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we really focused on this year was really driving this idea of creating this ultimate villain, right? This epic villain in Call of Duty. And so by really creating the story, I think our fans are really interested in, you know, not just running through the levels and participating on this roller coaster ride, but really looking at, we've introduced branching storylines. So, you know, really mixing it up a little bit. So depending upon how players choose to play the story, you know, you'll actually get maybe different endings, you know, different events will happen in the game that, you know, maybe your friend didn't have, but you did because you played it different. You know, then we're throwing in the Strike Force levels, which are the non-linear sandbox levels that actually affect the storyline as well. So we're really trying to make this time around for our fans and the people that play the game, this whole idea that it's your story. How do you want this single-player campaign to unfold? So I think it really breathes a lot new first into a Call of Duty or a first-person action shooter game that we think the fans are really going to love.
Could you give me an example of how far off from like a main storyline you can go with the branching storylines?
So, you know, we're still working a lot of that stuff in development, but rest assured that what'll happen is, you know, potentially characters may or may not be around based on that storyline, depending upon what you choose. So, you know, that interaction will be different for players. When you start to look at the Strike Force levels, depending upon how well you do that, it impacts the game where maybe it gets a little bit tougher down the line as you're playing the campaign. So it's really a lot of these different things that we're doing to really add the twists and turns of, like Treyarch, you know, we're known for taking, you know, our history, weaving our story through the historical events. So we look forward to our fans playing that.
It's not even released yet, and there's already been some controversy with Oliver North in the PR campaign. What's your take on that?
So for us, right, you know, like I talked about before, we really look to weave our fiction in historical events, right? And so we're always trying to get, you know, plausible reality. What is really happening today? What's going to happen, you know, with what's happened in the past? So Oliver North was there during the 80s, during those Black Ops, so who better to go to than somebody who was actually there to really help advise us about what that particular environment was like during those particular Black operations.
And of course, the online community is considered to be the strongest part of the Call of Duty series. You have such a big fan base, they play online all the time. How do you plan to keep them interested in the series?
Right, so, you know, look, we think everybody who plays our game, right? I think from a Treyarch perspective, we've got an epic single player campaign, we've got the zombie mode as well, which our fans love. To multiplayer, you know, just like our single player team is really looking at how we break apart that single player, what kind of disruptive innovation can we do with the branching storyline. Our multiplayer team's doing the same thing on the multiplayer game itself. Unfortunately, you know, we'll be talking about multiplayer in a couple of months, but rest assured that the team is looking at the same way our single player team looked at tearing apart the single player campaign. Our multiplayer team's doing the same thing.
So you can't talk anything about how the new gadgets and the new technology will affect multiplayer?
That is correct. But it's something that, you know, we can stay tuned. But I think, you know, if you start to look at some of the stuff that you saw in the single player campaign, the levels that we showed, and just knowing how, you know, crazy and great and creative our multiplayer team is, so be able to use, you know, near future tech in the battlefield and multiplayer is really going to add a dynamic that I think our players are going to love.
Do you feel it's liberating to be like the sole responsible for the sole party responsible for this series now?
You know, it's not about the sole party. This has always been a family of developers working together to drive where Call of Duty is and where it's gone and where it's going to continue to go in the future. I think for us, it's really we really put the pressure on ourselves. You know, our fans, you know, look up to us to say, what are we going to do differently from a studio perspective? And so for us, it's really about putting that pressure on ourselves on how do we drive multiplayer, how do we drive, you know, single player, and how do we bring those new experiences to life and we're obviously, for our fans who have been around since World at War, zombies starting as an Easter egg in that game. And again, thanks to the fans and their support, here we are with, one of the big pillars of Black Ops 2 is, the new Call of Duty. The new zombies.
All right, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.